running out of breath, but I need stamina. Running now I hear her cries, well, I need stamina. And I don't think I will make it in time, but I need stamina. Machina Arcana be mine, cause I need stamina. Just give up, don't get up, just give up. No, 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 just give up, don't get up, just give up. No, 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 I'm free to be the greatest, I'm alive, alive. I'm free to play the greatest game and die, die. The greatest, just die, die. The greatest, just die, die. You see, that's the trick with this. The whole trick with the singing is you gotta mix it up. If you just wait, 4 weeks every single time, people know when to expect it. But if you do it 2 days in a row, well, not 2 days in a row, but if you do it twice in 1 week, I don't even know what I'm doing, because the crew, the audience who's looking for Machina Arcana just got treated to a horrible rendition of Sia. And Sia, by the way, is one of the greatest musical artists of all time, and it takes a certain level of, maybe just a lack of shame to really try to do that on whatever. In any case, you see, I got you though, because you didn't expect it. That's the trick, In any case, I debated changing the words to the hardest, because Machina Arcana is a punishing horror game set in H.P. Lovecraft's universe, set in that world, but with a punishing twist. Now, don't get too scared off too early. It is indeed punishing, but it's not necessarily too punishing. This is a dungeon crawler adventure, and I use that term with a great deal of hesitancy, because I know the creator doesn't use that term, but it is to a certain extent a dungeon crawler. It is to a certain extent characters who are going to be setting off into this dark, grim world with a bit of a story that they have to achieve, a bit of an objective that goes on. You have to go through multiple story cards, achieving different objectives as you explore, as you level up your characters, as you slowly but surely evolve in this steampunk-based H.P. Lovecraft horror universe. And throughout the game, you're going to be drawing different items and building different items and crafting different items and upgrading those items with different modifications that will increase your armor, increase your will, increase your ability to survive in this world, while also giving you cool abilities. Some of these cards will be so much fun to draw. Maybe suddenly you can target ethereal monsters that otherwise you wouldn't have been able to hit and you would have to spend the whole game running from. Maybe suddenly you can teleport between walls, which changes the whole gameplay of the game. Suddenly you can move in ways that you could never have done before. Or maybe you just drew some sort of gigantic mace that rolls a bunch of dice and kills monsters a lot faster than you previously could have with your own innate attack ability. This is a game where it's not about destroying monsters that pop up, because the monsters will frequently pop up and they will slowly but surely hunt you down. This is a game about escaping, about running away, about knowing when to face the monster currently in front of you or behind you, or knowing when to shoot an exploding barrel, activating and destroying monsters around it, or possibly activating traps or shoving them into pits. This is a tactical game, a game about maneuvering and knowing when to fight, knowing when to run, knowing when to upgrade, knowing everything you need to do while you try to slowly but surely survive. Now, this game has been around for quite some time. First coming out in, I believe, 2013 was when the first edition came out, and then in 2018, I believe, is when the second edition came out. They had a second Kickstarter, Machina Arcana from Beyond, where they upgraded a lot of elements of the game. They upgraded the art, they upgraded many of the gameplay aspects in terms of tweaks or adjustments, and then finally we have the third edition. And I say finally, although I don't know for sure. Finally, we'll talk about this. There's a whole aspect of this we'll touch upon. But this third edition has minimal changes, not a lot of changes at all. There's a minimal amount, I'll get into what they are, as well as adding a new expansion, the Eternity expansion, which will have more characters, more scenarios, some gameplay tweaks and adjustments to the game. Machina Arcana should call to you if in any way you like the appeal. If you like games like Too Many Bones, I think Machina Arcana might be for you. I think it has, while a very different character upgrading system, it has that small app maneuvering aspect going on. If you like, I don't know offhand what a good comparison is, but if you like a dark, gritty dungeon crawler that is not so punishing as to be, unforgiving, but is punishing enough that if you stick around to fight the monsters, if you stick around hoping that you will just overpower whatever is attacking you, you will lose. This is not Zombicide Black Plague. This is not Cthulhu Death May Die. This is hard, this is tough, and you have to play tactically to win. But, and this is a big element for me at least, I historically have not enjoyed punishing games, because I mean, I get strategy, but I want the game to be fun. If I have to fight and face the monsters, I want to have fun. I don't want to run the whole time. I want to, in some way, enjoy the experience being presented. But Machina Arcana does that in very different ways. It does that through the frequent map interactions you will have, through the slow but sure evolution and involvement of your character's upgrades and abilities, and what they, not abilities, of their upgrades and what they can do thanks to all the upgrades and gear they have. It will still give you that fun element you like, but it will do so with more of a world building aspect, followed by the occasional fight where you take advantage of all those things you have done to, or maybe you flip a trap and suddenly half the map goes up in flames and a bunch of monsters along with it. It will give you those satisfying moments. This is not a pure run and hope to survive game. This is a tactical game, a tactical game where you have to evaluate your choices in front of you and respond accordingly. And if it's not clear already, I will have a review coming up of this as well. I will be putting up a review. I don't know exactly when, but there will be a review up of Machina Arcana 2nd edition, technically speaking, before this campaign ends. And the 2nd edition is very, very similar to the 3rd. We'll go into some of those changes and what they are, but they're basically the same. Off the bat, it's worth noting now, this game is available both on Tabletop Simulator as well as Tabletopia. But if you are going that route, I highly, highly recommend downloading the new assets. One of the things that is a big change from the 2nd edition to the 3rd edition is they updated the rulebook, as well as adding like a gameplay guide that walks you through the experience. And it's 25 pages, so it's not a small investment, but it is a significantly easier read than a rulebook. It reads like 25 pages of a novel, but it basically starts off with two people who are picking their characters and then taking actions and walks you through their turns, and it really gives you a good feel for the game, to the point that if you read that, you may even be able to start the game without the rulebook. You may even be able to start the game with just reading the gameplay guide and then reference the rulebook as needed. It really does do an excellent job of showing you how this game plays without involving and devolving into 30 pages of technical rules, because overall the game is very simple. You can get someone up and running in 5 minutes, but you do need someone there who knows the rules, or you do need the rule book for all those other interactions. What happens if I want to activate this trap from this angle? What happens if I want to spend essence to cover up a spawn space and someone else wants to contribute? You can get someone up and running very quickly, but you need those background rules in play or in the back of someone's head to actually, well, play this game. I mean, but again, I'm going to repeat that. I have legitimately got people up and playing this game within 5 minutes. I mean, I sat there and did all the research and the prep, but then 5 minutes of rules and we start the game and we're ready to go, and it's not a mitigated experience. It's not one of those experiences where you're just kind of playing until you figure something out. You have a good feel for the game. Machina Arcana is well, I'm getting too much into review territory. Let's cover the game. Let's cover the pledge levels here. And so we're going to have to talk about this from a few stances, from the stance of what's useful for a new backer as well as what's relevant for an old backer. And they actually have a handy-dandy flowchart somewhere over here which goes through that, although it may have been changed to a degree, which we'll talk about as well. Let me see if we can find it over here. We have the returning backer guide. I don't know where it is. It was somewhere here. The returning backer, here we are. Okay, great. But before we get to returning backers, let's go into the actual stuff over here. So to begin with, in terms of new stuff, exclusively new stuff, and I'll go more into detail, we have the 2 Eternity expansion. It's $25 for the 2 Eternity expansion. Basically, this is what you're going to want if you just primarily want the new stuff. If you have the 2nd edition, this is what I recommend. We'll go more into that shortly. Then we have the core game for $60, or the core game and all expansions for $100. To be clear, that's not the core game plus Eternity. That's the core game, 2 Eternity, and From Beyond. And what From Beyond is effectively, From Beyond is all the stretch goals and expansion content from the last Kickstarter. If you look over here, we have the premium game. So we have the premium game, which gave you the Recurrence expansion, the Geometry of the Void, and we have all unlocked stretch goals. That is effectively what the From Beyond expansion is, with a tiny amount of differences. And that what that means is the only thing I think that is different there is the core game has an extra 3 map tiles compared to the last core game, and those are from the stretch goals. So effectively, the stretch goals from the last expansion, from the last Kickstarter, were divided into the 3 map tiles being implemented in the core game, and then the rest of the stretch goal content being implemented in the From Beyond expansion. So it's a bit of a hybrid, which does make things a drop messy in terms of depending on what you got. I will say it looks like over here we have 722 backers in the old, and then 5,381 backers got the premium game. Because if you got the premium game, everything becomes a little easier. Because if you got the premium game from the last expansion, from the last Kickstarter, if you got the premium game, you're just going to want to get the 2 Beyond, the Eternity 2 Beyond expansion. That's what you're going to want to get, as well as possibly the upgrade pack for the cards and whatnot, if you want that. It's going to be $15, but if you want that, there is an upgrade pack available. I'll cover the actual differences shortly. If you got the core game last time, there it's a bit trickier, because if you got the core game, you're primarily going to want the expansion, the 2 Beyond expansion. You'll end up getting some duplicated stretch goals, but it's basically it will give you a lot of the extras you want. So you will get a little bit of extra duplicate content if you got the core game. And that's basically it. And then lastly, if you got the original Kickstarter, there is still a returning backer. Even back from 2013, they are still giving returning backer bonuses to anyone who backed either of their prior Kickstarters. There is a returning backer bonus. So let's go through it over here. So, returning backers. This is the flow chart if you're a returning backer. And again, if you're new, by the way, it's pretty simple. If you're new, you either want the core game for $60, or for $100, you want the core game and expansions. Personally, I'd recommend that. I think the expansion content here is not overwhelming. Sometimes I talk about the fact that in some expansions you end up some Kickstarters you end up paying an extra $50 for content you will never ever get to. I don't think the amount of content here is overwhelming. Don't get me wrong, the amount of content in the core game is not small by any means, but the extra scenarios and the extra stuff you'll get, and especially the gameplay changes in the 2 Eternity expansion, I think they're worth diving into for that $40 gap effectively. As far as returning backers, so again, first of all, you get a $25 credit as a returning backer. I don't know if you get that credit if you are only getting the $15. Let me see if over here. I don't know if it's over here, but basically for $15 you got an upgrade pack. I don't know if you get the $25 credit if you're only getting that. I'm not saying you don't. I just don't know. As far as free options, you can download and let's cover actually, this is a good time to cover what changes between the original Kickstarter and this Kickstarter. Sorry, not the original Kickstarter, the last Kickstarter and this Kickstarter. And that's all covered in this 3rd edition changelog that they have up on their website. But in short, they have a few things. First of all, the box is slightly bigger. Some people had a hard time cramming everything to the old box, especially if you sleeve your cards. But if you got all those stretch goals, if you got all the content, it was a little hard to make everything fit. So the box is going to be slightly bigger here. The manual is going to be, well, a new manual. And that is, I mean, if you already know how to play the game, this isn't a problem at all. But this game is incredibly well rated. This is a game that people really liked on BoardGameGeek. It's rated like an 8.5 or something. Let me see if I can find out what it is. But it's really highly rated on BoardGameGeek in terms of, let me see over here, Machina Arcana. No, we want this one over here. It's rated an 8.1 on BoardGameGeek. Okay, so that's a pretty high rating. The biggest critique was that the rulebook was hard to get to. The rulebook was not as clear or obvious as people would have liked. And so to that end, they have an updated rulebook. Again, not an issue if you know how to play the game, but otherwise, well, it's helpful. And you can download these things, by the way. The guidebook gives you the first 5 rounds of people playing the game. I found that tremendously helpful. Again, I could basically play the game after reading that. I still read the rulebook because I had time, but I think the rulebook is a good reference if you read those first 5 rounds. From there, there are player aids. The player aids are helpful for those first few games. I don't think they're a big deal after that. Once you know the basic actions, it's pretty easy. But the player aids can be very useful for your first, game or two while you get used to playing the game, while you get used to the sequencing of which actions cost what the order of play is, how the monsters react, and because some of these actions will say, okay, this action will require 3 stamina, and, this happens and that happens, and those things can be a little bit overwhelming at first. It's actually pretty easy. You open a chest, you gain 1 essence, you draw 2 cards, you pick one of them, and then if it's the right class, you equip it. It's actually very easy once you know the game, once you play through a few rounds, but for those first few rounds, having a reference player aid can certainly be useful. Then it has the explored light tokens are slightly reduced just in terms of being able to fit everything on the map properly when you have a bunch of stuff adjacent. Not a big deal at all. The added map tiles. They added 3 double map tiles from the 2nd edition's premium box. That's basically the stretch goals. This is not changing anything in if you already have those map tiles, that's not a change. It's just a adjustment to how the boxes are structured. And then the map tiles all have a small letter on them. So far we have a few changes here. You have to decide what matters to you, but most of these are really just not a big deal. I think the biggest deal is if you haven't played the game yet, then the manual, guidebook, and player aid can be useful for getting you into the Machina Arcana universe. But otherwise, not a big deal. Then we have some color scheme changes, which these are basically some color schemes to show people which characters equip which items for free. Different classes will, when they draw cards, will be able to equip them for free. So the Bruiser, for instance, can equip weapons for free. The Gunman can equip apparel for free. So it changed those backgrounds to make that more evident at a glance. That is a quality of life improvement. It is not a big deal at all. And I'm going to be harping on the fact that this is not a big deal for a reason. We'll get into that. Then we have the errata, start of round and new effects. So they have some errata of some different things that are changed, and they certainly can matter. Over here we have the Clarion, start a new round, then enter endgame. We have enter endgame. So there are slight adjustments, but there are not a lot. There are a handful of adjustments, not a big deal, and none of these really significantly change the gameplay experience. You're not going to have any big breaks here. This is just clearing up some text on some cards. Then we have the explicitly stating nearest on a bunch of cards. So a lot of cards in the game say things like teleports to attacker, teleports to spawn space. They don't actually say nearest spawn space, and so I didn't even realize this is something that you have to go through it, but when you're actually playing the game, it's almost intuitive that it's nearest. You might think active, which I can hear. If it says teleport to explorer, you might assume it's the active explorer as opposed to the nearest explorer. But basically, it just mentally add the word nearest to most of these types of actions or interactions in the cards on the game. Again, by the way, I'm not saying these aren't nice to have. These are certainly nice to have, but I don't think there's significant deals at all. And that's through a bunch of these. And then I think from there, we also had some rewarding of Destroy Explorer tokens. You can go through this page, by the way. There's a lot of stuff. To be very clear, there's a lot. But most of these changes are minimal to no impact at all. If you consider changes like Gloomhaven First Edition compared to Gloomhaven Second Edition, this is nothing. I mean, this game is well loved in its current state. It's got a lot of people who love this game, and I see why. And yet, these are quality of life improvements. This is not the difference between the second edition and the first edition. This is the difference between the second edition and cleaning things up, of saying, listen, we're going to make a third edition, we're going to put an expansion, we're going to iterate and constantly improve upon this game, so here are some tweaks. How many of them are actual issues? I mean, I think primarily if you go through the full changelog to see, but I think the primary differences are going to be, those guidebooks, the player aids and whatnot. Those are going to be supremely helpful. The cards are nice, but they're certainly not necessary, which brings us to the fact that, let's talk about the drama briefly. Before we talk about the should you back it, let's talk about the drama. And yes, there's going to be timestamps down below because, well, I do timestamps. So if you want to skip all the drama, by all means. But basically, this Kickstarter launched, and in day one, it hit, it did well. It did well. $170,000 out of $30,000 on day one. It did incredibly well. 2,384 backers. A lot of people are supremely interested in this game. And the comments were a bit of a mess because, and I understand. Keep in mind, I'm going to respond to some of these things, but I also want to say I understand the complaints. Comments were a bit of a mess, full of complaints about the fact that returning backers were not being valued. And what I mean by that is that returning backers did get a $25 credit in terms of being able to get more stuff. So you got a $25 bonus effectively in terms of getting these things. You're like, oh, returning backer, we value you, here's a bonus. But then for a lot of people, it was like, well, so you're saying if I want the guidebook and the updated cards and the new rulebook, I basically have to buy the entire new game again. And sure, it's not $60, it's $35, but that's still a lot of money. And you're basically putting this game out like a year after the last one arrived. I mean, I haven't even pulled my game out of the shrink or whatnot. This is what's happening here. Why am I getting penalized for being an early adopter, an early supporter of your project? That's the complaint. And I hear the complaint. I acknowledge the feelings behind it, but I also disagree with it, and I'll get into that. And this is something I put up a video a long time ago talking about the nature of people wanting their second editions or third editions or updated things for free, which is not something we see in any other industry. In the tech world, we don't see this at all. And there's a mental disconnect because, to a certain extent, people are happier with no new product. If there was no new product at all, people would be totally fine with it. They'd be like, okay, Machina Arcana second edition, I love it, it's great. As soon as you create that third edition and you say we're updating things, that suddenly introduces a degree of dissatisfaction with the game that you were totally happy with 2 days ago. And again, it's weird because it's an emotional response. It makes sense as an emotional response, but it's also illogical as an emotional response. If you were completely fine with nothing, then why are you upset with something new that you're not getting? It's weird. Either they owed you corrected cards before, they owed you a better rulebook before, or they didn't. The introduction of a new one doesn't mean they owe you anything. Now, I will note there is a difference between someone owing you something and someone creating a good business model that will incentivize returning backers. And to that end, I'm very happy that they basically have addressed those concerns. And there were two major concerns day one in terms of the complaints people had. And the first one was a confusion thing, which was this $25 pledge wasn't listed here. You basically had to pledge for no reward and put $25 in. And they had that in the FAQ, and they explained that in the description, but it was a little bit unintuitive. It's a Kickstarter for the expansion, for the Tutor Turner expansion, and yet there was no pledge level for it, which is confusing. It's simply cleared up. You just add the new pledge level, but it certainly was confusing, and I think in combination with the other things, it led to a lot of people, well, being disgruntled or feeling that this was all about the new people and not about the old people. Again, keep in mind, there's no reason not to do this. They just didn't think of it. I mean, there's no reason. Why would you hide this? It's just there. There's like, okay, great, do it that way, no problem. And then in terms of the second complaint, which again, I understand it but disagree with it, is the idea that, well, okay, great, you just put out this game, and now you're putting out these new introductions, these new tweaks, these new adjustments, and new people who never were on this train to begin with, they get those things easily for free, whatever, and we just get some $25 discount on buying the same thing we bought last time. Why is that a thing that we're doing here? And to that I have multiple answers. And again, keep in mind, they actually did address this already. They already heard the complaints, and they put out this $15 card update pack, giving you all the updated cards exclusively. It does not give you those player aids, which shouldn't be a problem if you've already played and know the game. It doesn't give you the rule book, and that's a logistics issue of just the shipping degree of what you'd have to create there. But they are addressing. You're never going to be able to make everyone happy, but they are addressing I think the most common complaint from the comments. And the reason there is, first of all, people often think it's easy. People often think it's easy. Just throw a few cards. It's an easy conversation. You don't have to do anything complicated at all. But it's never actually easy. I mean, if you watch my interview with Luke Peterson from AEG, or, I mean, I knew this stuff before, but the idea, whenever you introduce something new, it's a new SKU, it's a new print run, you have to factor these in. You can't just tell a factory, oh, and just print a bunch of extra of these cards. Well, as soon as you do that, it introduces a new cost to the equation, and it's a cost you can either pass on to people or absorb it. But the question is, how many people are actually going to back that? How many people are going to get that new SKU that you just introduced? That new minimum print run? I mean, there are often minimum print runs either from a logistics just paying money or actual minimum, and $1,000 minimum print run might be a common thing. And then are there 1,000 people who are going to pay $15 to get the upgraded cards as opposed to just taking the $25 discount and buying a whole bunch of new stuff? How can you predict what's going to happen, and are you as a creator willing to take that loss? And when I say willing to take that loss, I often mean that you often can't afford to take that loss. Keep in mind that Machina Arcana, that Adriama Games has put out one game since 2013. There is one game in their line. This is a passion project from them. They haven't produced a new game every single year. They've produced Machina Arcana, they tweaked and adjusted it and put out Machina Arcana 2, and now they're tweaking and adjusting it and putting out Machina Arcana, well, 3 or whatever you want to call it, but they are constantly tweaking their one project. This is a labor of love, and it's evident and clear when you watch the comments. I mean, he adopts this personality. If you read the comments from him, he's like, great, well, you know, I have a whole bunch of emails, but unfortunately my multiple personalities don't help with the multiple emails. Or he constantly refers to Machina Arcana as her. This is a passion project from people who are in love with this game. This is not a company that is trying to just simply make games and make money. They are making a game, and they are tweaking that game, and yes, there are frustrations that come along with that, but there are costs as well. They can leave it and die like many other companies do, or they can tweak it and then try to deal with accommodating prior backers, but also making sure the company's profitable. It's a complicated conversation, and there are no easy answers in the slightest. And the second thing is the actual changes here are minimal. I get that it doesn't necessarily feel that way. I get that suddenly you're looking at your card, which until 2 days ago was totally fine, and now you're like, well, mine doesn't say the word nearest. It's hard. It is both not a big deal at all, but it also does feel like you're being punished for adopting early. And to which my main answer there is that if you genuinely feel like this is a bad deal, if you genuinely feel like even if that card pack's not enough, you want the new updated rulebook, the updated guidebook, then my recommendation to you is take your second edition copy and right now list it on BoardGameGeek. Right now, go and offer it for sale for the cost of what it will get you, for what it will cost you to get the new stuff. You want that $60 game? Great, and you're gonna have to pay $35 plus, let's say, $15 shipping. You're gonna have to pay $50 for it. Great. Put your copy on BoardGameGeek for $50 right now, because right now, based on the current price points, that will sell. And if your answer is, I don't want to because I still want to play this game until the third edition arrives, then you can no longer tell me that new backers are getting a better deal, because you have the game. If you're willing to put your copy up right now to get your money back, then the monetary amount will work out in your favor. And if you're not willing to put that copy up, that means you value the game that is in your hands, that is something that other people don't have yet. They have to wait to get into this game, and it is a game that is hard to wait for. This is a good game that has been polished and polished and polished since 2013. That is a big deal. That doesn't happen in the gaming world that often. So it is a frustrating conversation, to be sure. It is 100% frustrating, and I get it. I do. But it's also not as easy as people think for creators to simply turn around and just suck up those costs. He could have abandoned this project and moved on to a new game, and everyone would have been totally fine with it. Nobody would have complained. And you would have the same product. I go on. The point is, it is a complicated conversation and try to see things from both sides. And again, I understand your side too, by the way. Keep in mind, I have the second edition on my shelf, and I do want those updated cards. And I do have a printed out sheet of 60 print pages from my printer of all the new stuff. I get it. I'm on the other side as well, so I understand both sides of the conversation. And with that, 24 minutes in, which I should probably stop doing these side rants. 24 minutes in, we are going to talk about the should you back it and should you not. And the answer, to save you time because it's been pretty long, is yes, you should back it. This is not a game that goes into traditional retail distribution. This is a game where your options are the Kickstarter, possibly the next Kickstarter, although my understanding, I could be wrong, don't take it for whatever, but my understanding is he's done tweaking the core game, and any additional Kickstarters will just be more expansion content. So it's not a guarantee, but hopefully there's an extra degree of confidence that this is the final product of the core game. Hopefully. No guarantees in life. In terms of should you back it, it's available on the secondary market, or it's available directly from their website. And this will be your best opportunity to get it earlier, as well as your best opportunity to get it at a reasonable price. If you look at if you look at Board Game Geek and you drive through to the price history of finding that old stuff, if you take a look here, the prices here, and you can click through to each one, but they reflect their pledge levels. In general, people have gotten what they pledged or more back from this game. This is a game that holds its value because it has a passionate audience, a passionate fan base. It has been tweaked since 2013. It is a good game. That is clear. Since 2013, this has been a good game, and it's only getting better because the tweaks are minor gameplay adjustments. They're not like doing major fixes to how the game works. They are minor tweaks and adjustments to an otherwise excellent system, and it is a game that has that fan base, and it's a game that people are paying for. So if you are on the fence as to whether you should or shouldn't get it, if you are interested in this game, I recommend jumping in. I recommend backing it. This is your best opportunity to get it. Complete side point, by the way, I will say, I drastically prefer the second edition box art. So this goes into the whole conversation. You'll never make everyone happy, because for me, I'm like, I want the new box, but I like the second edition box art better. So any case, side thing. So that's the point. That's basically it. This is an excellent game. It is a dark and immersive game. It is a game that introduces story into your game while also allowing you to completely ignore that story, because you can just ignore the text on all the cards and focus on the actual mechanics of the cards if story isn't your thing. I will say story isn't my thing, and yet it still is gripping enough. My one complaint is the lack of miniatures, because I'm a miniature guy, and I know why they have no miniatures. They've talked about this in the past. The map tiles are very small, and they wouldn't accommodate miniatures well, or at least they'd be out of scale with each other, which my answer there is the standees are out of scale with each other anyway. I want miniatures. That being said, I guess this is a good time to mention that Blacklist Games will be having a horror theme of their miniature line coming out, so maybe they'll fit. I don't think they're going to fit. I'm just going to have to stick with standees and get over it. In any case, that is Machina Arcana, an excellent game, an immersive world, and overall a good back. Until next time, I'm Alex Rack from BoardGameCo. I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a good one.